Man, success to me would be putting on a great executive, board meeting this quarter and chaperoning the kids' field trip and having a successful date night or something. I've started to build success around smaller time chunks and something that would be success and valuable for my whole unit.
Welcome to Authentic Energy, a podcast dedicated to getting to the bottom of what it means to be your true, authentic self at work. I am your host, Wendy Brand, a former corporate executive turned transformation coach. Let's take this learning journey together as I meet with guests weekly to learn how they've managed, or not managed, to find the elusive boundaries and success in their career and what it really means to find balance. Welcome back. I am so excited about our episode this week. But first, I have to remind you about the retreat at the end of July. It's coming up quick. It's at the amazing Savannah Resort in the Sonoran Desert in Carefree, Arizona. The spa is amazing, and our Authentic Energy program is going to be completely awakening and rejuvenating and will include sound baths by Noble Tones, forest bathing in the desert. It's optional, and we're going to do it in the morning hours, so it's cooler. But the program is not overpacked with activities so that you can take as little or as much time exploring all of the amenities that the resort offers. If you're interested, check out my website, wmbcoaching.com/retreat. But now, I'm so excited for you to meet my amazing guest, Jo Dockery. Jo is an experienced executive with a focus on operations and moving strategies into execution. She has worked at a number of high-growth tech companies, including Dell, Rackspace, SMS Assist, Alight, and Applied Systems. At each company, her impact of operational excellence, along with clear communication and authentic leadership, has enabled her teams and departments to excel. I've worked with Jo, and I know what a fierce and talented leader she is. And I know that she has been given some amazing opportunities throughout her career because of her talent. So when she told me that she was taking an intentional hiatus from the corporate world to help move her family across the Atlantic Ocean to London, I was a little bit surprised, but now even more impressed than before. Jo is patient and confident and knows that when she wants to go back, she will pick right back up where she left off. So while this is not a story of someone experiencing or recovering from burnout, I believe it's a story about a solid leader that understands balance and is choosing her priorities as they change, which they will continue to do throughout our lives. So after unpacking all the boxes and ensuring the family, which includes her husband, 2 sons, and a dog, adjusts and has the best summer of their lives in Europe, Jo looks forward to finding her next career stop that will utilize her talents and passions appropriately. Those passions happen to include travel, coffee, tacos, and naps, usually in that order. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jo Dockery. Jo, it is so wonderful to have you on the Authentic Energy podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wendy, I am thrilled to see you. It's been years.
It has been years. I know. It's great to see you as well. Well, why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about your career path, where you've been and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Well, if you're listening to this, let me at least describe where I am today, which is sitting in a very, very empty home in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you hear an echo, it's because we are in the process of moving and I have no furniture. That's why there is literally no pictures on the wall behind me. We are in a very sterile facility here. My family and I are in the process of moving from Charlotte to London. My 2 boys and I leave in less than 3 weeks now. So hectic time of life. I'm sure we'll dig into that as this podcast continues. But if I back up a little bit, I've been in the kind of professional IT world for about 20 years now. I started at Dell on the sales queue in the early 2000s. I was just trying to afford my tacos and beer consumption in Austin, fresh out of college, and Dell provided that. But it also was a great way for me to start learning what it was like to actually be on time, show up, hit numbers, do your job. And luckily, as fate would have it, I had an amazing manager there that you might know, Wendy, Courtney. She was at Dell, left to join Rackspace in San Antonio, and gave me a call and said that they were starting their first office in Austin. I got the job, and I was with that company for 12 wonderful, wonderful years. I think I did every job imaginable outside of anything specific in finance. Nobody really wanted me touching a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. I met my husband there. We were engaged and married. Met my best friend, Rachel, there. I mean, my family and my network is based from Rackers. So It was an amazing experience. I definitely found my niche towards the end of my time at Rackspace of really being an operator and somebody that was high on execution. You got a strategy, you want some way to actually make it come to life and build some numbers and structure around it. I'm your girl. And it turned out that Taylor Rhodes, who was the CEO of Rackspace for a while, when he left and went to be CEO of a company in Chicago called SMS Assist, he called and wanted to see if I would run operations for him up there. And as we talk, you'll find out more about me and my husband, our family. We have a tendency to say yes to a lot of opportunities that come. We could have happily stayed in San Antonio for a long time, but decided while our boys were young at the time, we would make the move to the Windy City, and I'm so glad we did. That city felt more like home to me than just about any other place we've lived. Worked for a couple companies for the couple of years that we were in Chicago, and more recently was at Taylor, who's CEO of Applied Systems. I was at that company, does insurance software, running product operations for the past 2.5 years. Okay. So I've been in all kinds of operator type roles. So I've been in product operations at Applied for the past couple of years. And I just recently left at the end of March because I now have a full-time COO role of trying to get my family relocated across the Atlantic.
That's a big job.
It's a really big job. My project plan and Excel spreadsheets have far exceeded my expectations for this move. Yeah, so that's a bit about me and my background.
Awesome. Well, we were talking before we started recording about, the fact that you are taking a break, but it is not from burnout, right? You loved your job before.
I loved my job. I loved my team. A very difficult decision, but we've moved enough in our life to know that moving is a full-time job, and moving internationally with 2 kids and a dog is truly a full-time job. So it was a sacrifice that we think is worth it for our family.
Well, I think it's great for the audience to hear because really the intention of this podcast was to find women that were finding success and creating some sort of balance, raising kids, a family, and figuring out how to do it without sacrificing, what's important to them. And so it sounds like you have been able to do that. This is an intentional kind of step back to move the family. So I'm curious, because I have a theory about what causes burnout. And part of that is kind of definition of success, priorities, setting boundaries, et cetera. So I'm curious, what has your definition of success been for yourself?
Yeah, it's like most people that you've interviewed on this podcast, it's changed with time.
Yeah.
A while ago, I would actually say it was almost 8 years ago. If I think back, so Ryan, my 8-year-old, was a baby at the time. I took a course with Rackspace called 21st Century Leadership. It was an awesome leadership course out in the Seattle area for a week. And I remember we had to write down our goals and our definition of success. And I vividly remember writing at the time that I wanted to be a vice president by the time I was 40. And I wanted to, I forget exactly how I worded it, but I was like, I'm going to carry the torch for being a working mom executive. I'm going to show people that you can do it all. And now I look back like,
we did it.
I did it. I did it. But it's really interesting how as I did that, I got the title, I got the job, I had another child. The success started to change more for what success felt like in smaller increments and in smaller chunks. I found that for me, it's a lot easier to feel successful and stay motivated if I have more short-term goals versus thinking about the next big title or the next, I don't know, retirement or something like that, that just feels far off to me. It's how am I going to bring value to my job? Maybe this quarter, man, success to me would be putting on a great executive, board meeting this quarter and chaperoning the kids' field trip, to some sort of play or butterfly garden or something, and having a successful date night or something. I would
Yes.
I started to build success around smaller time chunks and something that would be success and valuable for my whole unit. So that includes my boss or whatever, my company, whatever direction I need to take from my job, but also success as a mom and success as a partner and wife. I'm going to quote it. Something that always sticks with me is the Spanx founder, which Spanx always sticks with you, right? I mean, less Spanx.
Yeah.
But she said, stop thinking about success and start thinking about value. And I remember I took that a while ago. That's not a new quote that Sarah Blakely has said, but it's, am I bringing value to this project? Am I bringing value to my kids? Am I bringing value to my husband? And man, you start to feel like you're being successful way more often. And I feel like that can keep the motivation growing, where if you're just chasing the paycheck, the bonus, the title, that can be really far away and misleading and feel really, can be demotivating at times.
Yeah. And so have you found yourself pulling together a successful board meeting, having a date night with your husband, and chaperoning a field trip for your children? Okay.
Oh yeah.
So it is possible.
It's totally possible. You just have to be, I find for me that I want to say it might be a little bit easier for me. Discipline is my number one strength. So I can be really ruthless with my operating mechanisms personally and professionally. But when I can pull a plan together that says, I know far enough in advance when, say, a kid's field trip is, or when I might be able to take time to go eat lunch with the kids at school. They love it. You bring them Chick-fil-A on Friday and it's like they're the best day. And little things like that take an hour out of your time.
Yes.
But man, you're a winner because you just showed up with Chick-fil-A for your kid in front of his whole class. Like,
right.
That's awesome. And planning a date night sometimes can be difficult, but even if you plan to just go get that special bottle of wine and order your favorite sushi, and you're going to watch 3 episodes of Ted Lasso, but you make it like a date and it's home and you don't even need a babysitter, man, that's good quality time. And you've put some effort into it. And then, yes, obviously on top of it, from a professional standpoint, you got to do your job. You've got to excel and provide quality work. But I feel like I can do that if I've got that kind of balance and flow, and I've carved out the time, to pull those things together.
Yes. It sounds like being intentional is part of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
And,
you have to be.
And so I also believe that you have to be intentional about, if you want to do those things, if you want to make sure that those things are happening in your life, you've got to be good at setting boundaries, or at least setting expectations with others so that they know. And so do you have any examples of how you've done that in your life?
Oh yeah. I would say probably the number one thing I did, and I should at least set the tone, that I'm a night person. I can stay up late. I can do a lot of work at night. Sometimes I think I do my best work after 9 o'clock if I'm thinking and doing strategy or presentations. I'm not a morning person. I do not wake up to want to do CrossFit or something at 5 a.m. like my husband. Like, that's insanity to me. But when I start to figure out, as you start to figure out when you're most productive, when you get your best time and when you're not productive, in the mornings for me were not productive time. I didn't like being rushed. If you went back and looked at my calendar at Applied, you would see that I have an out of office block really until about 9:30, 10 o'clock East Coast time every morning. Now, East Coast, it was a little bit easier for me. When we moved from Chicago to Charlotte, and the company's still based in Chicago, Central Time Zone, and meetings aren't really getting started until 8 or 9 o'clock Central. But I used that to my advantage. I put that block and buffer in there. I really would not take meetings unless it was absolutely urgent. And most of them aren't. They just aren't. And that hour to hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to start the day, I could use that however I saw fit. Maybe it was a walk. Maybe it was a Peloton ride. Maybe I just needed to sit and pay my bills, or do something. Maybe the kids have a costume day or the chaperoning day or something I needed to get together for my personal life to get it out of the to-do list on my brain. I had that time, and I can't tell you how valuable it is for me to get my head on straight, to know that whether it was exercise or a personal to-do list or just getting ready for my day while drinking my coffee uninterrupted. I mean, Wendy, that was sacred time to me.
I think that's huge. So you talked about organizing the work and how you managed to work in the balance of your life, all the pieces. But what about time for yourself and making sure that your energy isn't depleted, that you're protecting that?
That's probably the hardest part for me. If I'm honest, Wendy, is I am naturally an introvert, and a lot of people might raise their eyebrows because when they meet me or they see me, I don't mind being a center of attention. I don't mind being on stage. I can mingle with the best of them, but that depletes my energy big time. So I spend a ton of time at work talking and being happy and smiling. And then I do the same when my kids get home, and I'm excited to talk to them and hear about what they're building on Roblox or Minecraft and all of this energy. And for me, I mean, silence is golden. When I get in my car, I don't even turn on the radio most of the time. I just want silence. And I've found that, again, sometimes that morning routine that I had Monday through Friday after the boys went to school, protecting that silence before they got carried away is really important. But then there's other times that's probably the closest I would get to reaching what some would refer to as a phase of burnout. It wasn't burnout with work. It was burnout from almost a sensory overload. Like I'm just constantly needed, constantly in this state of being pulled in a bunch of directions. And all I wanted to do was read a book or take a nap or just sit and stare at a wall. I just need that to recharge.
That's great. And it's great that you know that about yourself and that you're able to create that time. That's awesome. So those are the personal pieces, right? The things about yourself that you've been able to protect. But as a leader, as you've taken on roles with great leadership responsibility, what lessons have you learned about your role as a leader in culture and kind of well-being in the workplace? So creating that environment so that your team can protect their energy just as you've been able to do.
Yeah. Gosh, I think this is a simple answer, but it's hard to do. You have to show them that you're doing it and then stick to it. So again, my morning routine, I'll keep going back to that. Guys, I'm not going to be on Slack, email, any of that until, 9, 10 o'clock East Coast time. I'll be on after that. I work at night. If you want to hit me up at night, cool, totally fine. If you don't work at night, I like to know that. And then I am very careful to not send them Slack, email, anything. So I get to know my team. I want to know how they work just as I want them to know how I work. And I try to mirror it. Right. Yeah. So I think you let your team know that you set boundaries And then you find out from them, what boundaries do they have? Do they have kids? Do they travel? Are they night people, morning people? Do they always take lunch? Do they get hangry? What are the things that you need to know about your team to help them operate successfully and feel supported? Always encourage PTO and time off.
That's great advice. And I'm curious what, for new leaders that really find themselves in a role that require a significant contribution from them and the equally important responsibility of being a people leader. I think it's hard to balance that kind of you are a contributor. Unfortunately, we don't get to just be people leaders. We have to balance our own work plus lead a team and find that time to have those important conversations with them. Any guidance you would provide new leaders just starting out trying to balance that?
Oh, yeah. Two things. One is set weekly one-on-ones with your team, even if it's for 30 minutes, and let them bring the agenda. Let them decide if they want to cancel it. Let them have undivided attention from you every week for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, whatever. I don't think it needs to be a full hour. I really don't. But your team will bring stuff to you that they think is, important, top of mind, and you will always have a check-in with them and give them space to talk. Hey, I just need help with this problem, or I want to tell you about this PTO thing, or I'm just pissed off about this, whatever it is. It might be a therapy session. It might be a working session. They might need to cancel it because they have other stuff going on, and that's great. But you should always, always, always hold that one-on-one every week to make sure your team feels that they can talk to you and you are accessible and that they bring the agenda. That's a big one because you'll always keep a pulse on your team and your team will always at least feel that you are accessible to them. I think that's really important, especially the higher up you go, because your calendar does get crazy and sometimes it's hard to find spots on an executive's calendar. So make sure there's always space for them. Another secret, it's not a secret, but another thing that I started to do that has worked wonders for me later in my career, and I wish I'd done it sooner, is bring your team into what you're working on. That might sound so silly, but I didn't realize how helpful and amazing my team was until I would have all this on my plate of like, Jo, you need to prepare the town hall, or here's like the executive board meeting coming up. And I would initially feel like I was on the hook to do it all until I turned my team meetings. I would go through my typical like high level, this is what you need to know, this is what's going on, for the first 10, 15 minutes, cascading messages. But then we could spend 30 minutes of our team meeting, which was already blocked out, being like, okay, guys, so we've got this executive board meeting coming up at the end of the month. They really want to focus on what's going on with this product launch. So what do y'all know? What are you thinking? How can we do this? And then before you know it, at the end of the meeting, I've got a shell of a PowerPoint. We've started working through the agenda. I've got Jack able to work on some data that we might need. I've got Erica that is going to bring up this in her next meeting agenda to get stuff from people on the floor. And then a couple of days later, we can come back together and they're helping. I'm delegating. I'm using a time that was already blocked on my calendar to do work that other people might think has to be done like after hours. And it's also an amazing opportunity for your team, because if you think about it, like now, Erica, Jack, Cheryl, Emily, they all know what we're going to talk about at the board meeting. They see how an executive deck can come together. And then if I'm able to share an end result, hey, these are the changes that our CMO and CEO made after the fact. So they can kind of see the before and after. And I feel like that's also it's great visibility into what's going on in the company. It's great for me as a leader to see, hey, did they have a hard time getting that data? Wow, they're really great at telling the story. Or you can kind of start to fish out some great skill sets or maybe areas of opportunity on your team. It's so, I mean, it's a win-win-win on all levels. So I would say that, and then keeping your sacred one-on-one time with your team is probably the best way to be a people leader and feel accessible to your team, but also get your job done.
Two great pieces of advice. And I think, the thought of bringing your team in, it reminds me of another Gifty quote from the episode with Gifty. I know. Where she said, just because you can do it all doesn't mean you should do it all. Exactly. I was like, yes.
Exactly. I mean, you have a team for a reason.
Right.
And they should know that what's important to you should be important to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. Now it's time for a couple personal questions, if that's okay.
Of course.
Awesome. So what is the one thing that you do in your life that just brings you pure joy?
Order room service.
I love it.
Yes, I love my kids, my husband, and blah, blah, blah. There is nothing better, in my opinion, like pure joy of sitting in ideally a luxury hotel.
Yes.
I'm not talking about room service from the Holiday Inn Express.
Right.
I'm talking like I want high-end hotel room service with my coffee in like a silver carafe.
Yes.
And little tiny little tiny bottles of anything, ketchup, jam, salt and pepper.
Honey,
I want them on my tray. And I want somebody to make me breakfast, and I want to eat it in my bed in my bathrobe in silence.
Thank you. Why my husband does not understand that. He's like, you could just go downstairs to the restaurant. It's cheaper. I'm like, I don't care. It's not the same.
Put on a bra to do that. I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. I love it. Okay. So if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, like your 5 or 6-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Oh, so many things. Okay. 2 things that come to mind. Serious, but funny. One, I went through a Mariah Carey phase in elementary school where I kept going for the corkscrew perm because I wanted to be Mariah. It doesn't work on thick hair. It didn't work. So I would say, don't perm your hair. I would also say later in life, don't get into the tanning beds because it just doesn't matter. Fake tans are fine, or zero tans are fine. But I really wanted to be tan in high school. And then on a serious note, I mean, those are serious. Nobody should get a going to a tanning bed. But from more of a heartfelt one, I think I would tell her always, always, always follow your gut and your heart, because I think some of my best moments in my entire life and things that I have going on in my life are because I followed a gut, or I said yes to an opportunity, or I said no to something that I knew wasn't right, whether that's calling off a wedding or saying yes to a career opportunity, saying yes to a friendship. Those are the best things that have happened in my life. And then if I think about, I don't have too many regrets, but I do have some. And I knew it in my head, my heart, my gut, that I should have done the thing, gone on this trip, said no to this thing, applied to that job. And I regret it, and they haunt me. And I just think that there is some intuition, I think especially a woman's intuition.
Yes.
It's real. It is so real. And do you know if you're getting into something that's right or wrong? And I just can't, I couldn't tell that little Jo enough, like always follow it. It's not, it would not steer you wrong, because the times that I followed it have been life-changing, and the times that I haven't, I regret it.
Yeah. Trust it. Yeah.
Always trust it. It's
great advice.
Yeah.
Okay. So now my favorite topic is travel.
Yeah.
And I know
happy to talk about that.
also love to travel.
Yeah.
So what is your most favorite place you visited, and then what's on your bucket list?
Oh my God, my bucket list is a whole other podcast, Wendy. Okay, so 2 of the favorite places that I visited are kind of similar, and it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but both Southern Hemisphere, between South Africa and New Zealand. So those two countries, I mean, the scenery is, you can't even, the pictures never do it justice. The scenery is so incredible and just inspiring in both places that it's, I don't know, I can't even find the words to describe how beautiful it is.
Yes.
The people are wonderful. Those are my two favorite places that I've ever been. Bucket list. There's a few things. I really want to see the Northern Lights. My friend Rachel and Jeff saw the Northern Lights, and she just said that's almost like this spiritual and magical moment that happens when you see it. And I don't have a specific place, whether it's Iceland or Scandinavia or there's nowhere in particular. I don't need to see it from an igloo or anything, but it would be cool just to see them. I also have, I'm a foodie and I say wino, but it's wine, it's champagne. I like, but I want to drink and eat certain things in certain places. So I really want to have a glass of champagne in Champagne, France.
Yes.
I would love to go to, Bordeaux for wine. I haven't actually been to Napa, which is here,
gosh.
And love wine. I'd love to go to Napa and have a great, just stain the teeth purple.
Yes.
trip. And then I think this is kind of a cliche one, but I think it would be incredible for the introvert in me is those overwater bungalows that you see in like the Maldives or something like that, like where there can't be good cell phone reception there.
Right.
And you're just in this little bungalow overlooking paradise. Like that sounds wonderful too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
I love travel. And that's another reason why we're taking this leap to London is I hope to just travel and show my kids, my boys Europe and see the world while we have such close access to it.
Yes. What a great opportunity. And I agree that travel it just opens up your mind, to see other cultures and experience different things. I think it's going to be really impactful for your kids. And I just think that's awesome that you're doing that.
I really hope so. I mean, my boys are great travelers, but it's something different versus like going to London for a week and doing the tourist stuff versus you are immersed in 365. You get the summers, you get the winters, you get the food, you get the multiple cultures, and we're really looking forward to the experience and opportunity. And as I check some items off the bucket list, I'll be sure to keep in touch and let you know.
Yes,
if I have to add any more.
Yes, Jo, this has just been so delightful, and I think what you're doing now, taking this intentional break and just being so mindful of the opportunity that's there for your kids but having been able to find that success and balance in your career is so special. And just thank you so much for sharing that with us. I appreciate it so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I still had at least somewhere to sit so I could talk to you. Apologies for the echo chamber in the house, but it's always a delight. Keep doing what you're doing, Wendy. I love the podcast. I can't wait to hear from more folks and take more quotes and lessons learned from other people that you speak with.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. See you soon.
All right. Bye. Jo is so amazing. What a great conversation. Okay, here are my takeaways. Number 1, sometimes it's easier to find success and stay motivated when you create smaller goals and balance them with the other parts of your life. For example, putting on a great quarterly board meeting, having a date night with your husband, and chaperoning your child's field trip. Number 2, to quote Spanx founder Sarah Blakely, stop thinking about success and start thinking about value. Number 3, refocus on the value you are bringing to any situation rather than what you are getting out of it. Number 4, schedule your time in a way that works for you. Depending on if you're a morning person or a night person, block your calendar to allow for that important time needed to start your day right or get organized in the evenings, depending on your preferred schedule type. Number 5, protecting your energy can be difficult. For fellow introverts, make sure you schedule quiet time, alone time to refill your bucket. even if that just means not turning on the radio when you're in the car. Number 6, let your team know what your boundaries are and then find out what boundaries are important to them and respect that so that they feel supported. Number 7, promote time off. Number 8, keep your one-on-ones with your team and provide your undivided attention where they bring the agenda. The higher up the ladder you climb, the more difficult it can be to find time, but it's equally as important and maybe even more so. Number 9, invite your team into the work you are doing. Collaborate with them and allow them to contribute to the work. This gives you visibility to their strengths and skills and allows them to feel valued. That is all for the Authentic Energy Podcast today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Many more to come. Don't forget about my retreat at wmbcoaching.com/retreat. I hope you'll join us.